Welcome to the Wisdom That Breathes channel. Across all our platforms, we try to share wisdom which is relevant and accessible to everyone. But on this particular platform, we go deeper into some of the ancient principles found within the scriptures. If you find some of the terminology difficult or inaccessible, then go over to our Keshava Swami YouTube channel where you'll be able to find other content which is perhaps more relatable. Thank you and enjoy the wisdom that breathes. Om Jnana-timirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Srila Prabhupada Ki. Yes, I was thinking about, we're talking about reading. That's the topic this morning, and I thought maybe what I'll do is just tell you my journey with reading, just how I began reading Srila Prabhupada's books and what I've tried to do over the years, maybe just as a beginning, and then maybe Hare Pran can also say something about his study, if you'd like to also share, and then maybe we can just kind of keep it quite open, and maybe have some questions, some things you find as obstacles, blocks you may have when it comes to Srila Prabhupada's books as well. That may be a topic you may want to discuss, because sometimes we may read Prabhupada's books and certain things may not immediately be like, okay, how do I accept this, you know? So maybe if there's things like that you'd want to talk about, we can also do that. There you go, I just invited trouble by saying that. No, but please be open. Anything you want to discuss, we can try and do that. So yeah, my insignificant journey in terms of reading Srila Prabhupada's books. So I grew up in a Hindu family and never read anything, which is part of the tradition. And then, yeah, when I was 15, I studied at school, and my best friend, he was a Muslim. One of my best friends at school, he was a Muslim, and I don't know how deep his knowledge was, but at least he could say in 5 minutes what he believed in. You know, it was like 5 of this, 5 pillars, this, that, and he just had a clear idea. And for me, it was just like, I have no idea. So it was that, and maybe just some other inquisitiveness that I was like, it's about time I started reading something here. So when I was about 14, 15 like that, I went to the library. I liked reading books, somehow or other. I was in that nerd group when we did so I liked reading books. Like I was saying this morning as well, I was quite introvert, a shy person, so like reading books was great, like it was time alone. For me, it was very natural. So I went to the library, I remember, and I got 3 versions of the Bhagavad Gita. I just took whichever versions were there. None of them were Prabhupada's. And I came home and I started reading them, and yeah, like I didn't understand anything. It was like, but the interesting thing is, literally 2 or 3 weeks after that, I came into one class at school, and one of my best friends, he said, oh, Hare Krishna came to my house and he gave me the Bhagavad Gita. I was like, oh, that must be a sign, because I was trying to read the Gita, but none of these made sense. So I said, I want to read it. So then he brought it in the next day. So I remember that day I took Prabhupada's Gita home. I still remember it. I went home and I went to my bedroom. And I was just like, this is it, you know, like all the answers to life, the universe, everything is gonna unfold before me. So I was like, I had such reverence for the Gita actually. And I opened it and after one page I just shut it. It was like, vroom. if I'm honest, it was even more confusing than the other ones on initial. But it was the first time in life something happened to me whereby I read something, I had no idea what was being said, but I felt like inspired, like this is amazing. So this is the first time I had ever had a feeling like that, of reading a book, not understanding it and thinking like this is amazing. So I was like, this is like, what kind of book is this? Like I have no idea what it is, but something inside of me tells me it's amazing. So then I just continued reading. And then I decided to go into the temple, because I used to go to the manor from a young age, but I never spoke to any devotees. Like, no devotees have spoke to me either. Devotees, I don't know, somehow or other, I just never connected with a devotee. So, yeah, by this time I was maybe 15 or 16. So then I went and I went to a class. And the class was amazing as well, because in 1 hour I learned more in one class than I did in 1 year of reading by myself. I was like, oh, that was also humbling. And then I started speaking to devotees more regularly. So then the Bhagavad Gita began to unfold. But it was interesting, I was being cultivated by Pandavasena devotees. I got cultivated mainly by Matajis actually. Just as a side note, just to say that. And there was this one Mataji, and she had bought an entire set of Prabhupada's conversations. I don't know if you've seen that. It's like 20 books or something, Prabhupada's conversations. So before reading any of the small books or anything like that, I just started reading these conversation books. And it fascinated me because Prabhupada was like convinced, he was clear, he was charismatic, he was funny. And I've practically read all of those within like 1 or 2 years. I read all of those conversation books. So like I read all of those books before I read any other books. And then I started reading other books. And then then I joined the temple when I was 21. And then we did like, it wasn't really Bhakti Shastri at that time, but we were just reading from Burijan Prabhu's books and then systematically studying. So that really helped me a lot, like studying Prabhupada's books systematically. My mind is like a mathematical brain I have, so I look for patterns, for boxes, structure. I love all that kind of stuff, you know. Acronyms. Kadamba Maharaj used to always make fun of me about acronyms. He goes like, why do you keep these acronyms? It's so like nerdy, you know. He goes, if you keep doing acronyms, when I give you sannyas, I'll have to call you His Holiness ABC Swami. That's what he said. So I stopped doing acronyms for a while. And but Bhakti Shastri was really good because I love that structure. And this is one thing I want to say about reading. And again, it helped me. I'm just sharing with you. Everyone has their own way of reading Srila Prabhupada's books. But for me, having structure really, really helps. Because when you know, like, this is the whole Gita, this is how it's divided, this is what every chapter is about. When you have that overview, I find you can go in and you can go much deeper. It's like, say for example, if you go Mayapur for the first time and there's so many things, like you can't notice anything, you're just trying to find your way around. But once you know like the map of the whole place, then when you need to go from one place to another, you don't need to even think, you just walk because you know it. And then you can like notice all the other stuff, you know. Like that's the place you get the best maha. You can notice all these other things. So I think Shastra is like that. When you understand it as an overview, then you can actually go in and find a lot more gems. So doing Bhakti Shastri and stuff like that was amazing for me. It really, really helped. I would really encourage all of you to do that if you haven't already. And then what I started doing is reading, but trying to creatively share it with other people. So naturally from day one we were preaching, we were giving talks. So we were always reading Shastra and thinking like, how does this relate to people in their life? How does it even help them? Like, what does this mean for me now I read this when I wake up tomorrow morning? How does it change my life? And that's where this whole idea of like wisdom that breathes came from, you know, like how do we bring this wisdom to life? And I think that's what made studying really, really exciting for me, because I was creatively trying to share it with other people as well. And so I had an ambition in my life that I should be able to speak about anything to anyone from the Bhagavad Gita. I need to get to that point where like, if anyone says anything in any situation, I can say something from the Bhagavad Gita and it will be relevant to them. So that was the challenge I wanted to get to, because I was convinced that these books, like, they answer everything. So yeah, that really helped me on the journey as well, like learning, creatively sharing with others. And then another thing that really helped me was writing. When I read books and I wrote about them, I found writing like an amazing way of actually understanding the philosophy. Because when you speak, you can kind of wing it a little bit, like say a few bad jokes in between and like go round and round. But when you're writing, it has to be very clear. It has to be very logical. It has to be very kind of no like waffle, what they would say in English. So then it really makes you very clear in the philosophy. So then I wrote like books on the Gita, on the Bhagavatam, on the CC, and that really helped as well. So one monk, you may have heard of him, Thomas Merton, he's a very famous Trappist monk, is it? Franciscan monk, something like that. And he writes that when you write, most people think writing is because you want to express something to the world. You want to express your thoughts. But he says writing is an amazing way to discover your own thoughts as well. And so I found that writing about what I was reading about and writing about the philosophy also helped me to become more thoughtful and helped me to see that philosophy in a deeper way. So writing also helped me a lot. And then, Haribo. Oh, was that not a knock on the door?
Oh, no, it was me accidentally.
Oh, okay. So, great British tradition to knock. So. What was I saying? Writing. And then the last thing was, or the last thing, but another thing was speaking about the philosophy. And trying to really understand what people are going through, what their challenges are in life. I find that if you give a class but you don't know the needs, the interests, the concerns of the people you're speaking to, it becomes very difficult to like really communicate in this age, because people don't have attention. None of us, we don't have attention. So it's like when you speak now, you have to think a lot, you know, to be really relevant. Otherwise, most people can't pay attention. The mind begins wandering very, very quickly. So like giving class was also a good like exercise, because when you have to speak and you have to speak philosophy, it's like it can be an uphill struggle, you know, to keep people interested. So it really helped me to study Shastra more closely, to really think like, okay, what's the powerful things we can share that will really help people really grasp their attention. So still working on it, but speaking also about the philosophy really helped. And like this, Prabhupada's books actually became the most important thing in my life, actually. If I think about Prabhupada's books, it just becomes my whole life. Like for many years, for 15 years, I traveled distributing Srila Prabhupada's books up and down the UK. Morning and evening we would study Srila Prabhupada's books. I travel the world now. I try to speak about Srila Prabhupada's books and what he's given. And Prabhupada's books just really continue to fascinate me and touch my heart. And yeah, they're my best friend. The books are my best friend. So I said that prayer this morning. Sanatan Goswami, he you know, back in the day it was difficult to get a copy of the Bhagavatam. You know, nowadays we got it everywhere. Small books, big books, e-books, Kindle books, everything. But back in the day you couldn't get a copy of the Bhagavatam. It had to be hand copied. So Sanatan Goswami didn't have a copy of the Bhagavatam. One day he had a dream, and in that dream a Brahmin boy came to him and gave him the Bhagavatam. So in his dream he was over the moon, he was in ecstasy, he was like overjoyed. And then he woke up and then he realized, oh no, it was only a dream. I didn't get the Bhagavatam, it was a dream. It was, oh no. So he was lamenting. And then it said that very day, a Brahmin boy came to him, Krishna, and gave him the Bhagavatam. And then he began reading the Bhagavatam every day. And in Krishna Leela Stava, he writes this beautiful prayer. Madeka bandhu mad sangin mad gurur mad mahadana Man nishtaraka mad bhagya madananda namostute. He says, Madeka bandhu, the Bhagavatam is my one friend in life. Mat sangin, the Bhagavatam is my constant companion. It always stays with me. Mad guru, the Bhagavatam is my guru. Mad bhagya, the Bhagavatam is the best thing that happened to me in my life. Man nishtaraka, the Bhagavatam is always lifting me up. Mad bhagya, madananda is the Bhagavatam is the source of all my happiness. Ananda namostute. He says, therefore I always offer my respects to Bhagavatam. So I can't say I'm there, but some realization of that yeah, the books are the best friend. They stay with you through life. When you have doubts, you can open the books and they give you conviction. When you need inspiration, you can open the books and they give you vision. When you have questions you need answered, you open the books and they give you the answers. Everything is there in the books, and but it takes time. No, it's like we hear all of this in the class, and then we go back. And then we got the bookshelf there, and you're like, it looks good on the bookshelf, you know, nice bookshelf. And then when we pick up a book and then we start reading and we think like, he was saying all that about the books, but I don't feel any of that when I read. And then we get discouraged because we think like, maybe it works for others, but I can't, it doesn't work for me. But it wasn't always like that for me. I also had to struggle. I also read chapters in the second canto about the universal form and the Mahatattva and the goodness coming out of the mind. And you had to struggle through that. But if you spend time with the books, if you really spend time with Prabhupada's voice, magical things happen. So it's not a cheap thing to establish a relationship with the books. It's going to require a little bit of determination, a little bit of discipline, some desire. But once you have that connection, like I was saying this morning, you can then begin to open the Bhagavatam, and you have a whole world to live in. So yes, getting there. And Hadar Pran now has a mic. Which signifies that you have to share. You don't have to. But would you like to share something on the books? Or
I could say, I'm sorry to take time away from your association. Okay, so sorry. He just pulled me up. But I will say that I had a complex relationship with reading Prabhupada's books, because I grew up in kind of Krishna consciousness, some level of minute Krishna consciousness. But there's been times like when I first started coming to temple regularly, I would come and do kirtan, play mridanga, do that, but It's been months, maybe it's been months since I picked up Prabhupada's books. And then I just kept going on, and then suddenly when I was just doing kirtan one day, I'm like, I don't really know who Krishna is. I'm chanting this kirtan with all this like complexity and like breakdowns and all this stuff, but I don't really know who Krishna is. So then I looked at the Bhagavatam. It was just so intimidating. It's like 12 cantos, 18,000 verses. When am I ever going to finish this? So, and then I got some really good instructions from a couple of my teachers, and one of them said that you have to have, reading Prabhupada's books is like developing a relationship with Prabhupada. Mm-hmm. Everybody needs to have that relationship with Prabhupada, and as Maharaj was saying, is that, and a relationship is built on everyday contact. Mm-hmm. If it's 10 pages, 5 pages, 1 page. I had one devotee told me, at least read one word. Just open the book and read one sentence of Srila Prabhupada's books. And if you can't even read one word, at least find where the book is. At least touch the book to your head or something like that. So there were days like I don't want to read Gita, like 13 chapter, Kshetra, again, all this stuff. I'm just going to put the book on my head and put it back. So gradually, I started reading a bit more and more with the association devotees, and I heard, one thing that was beneficial to me, the first time reading Bhagavad Gita or Srimad Bhagavatam, I wasn't understanding like this 5th canto and the 2nd canto, and some parts of the 9th canto were a bit confusing to me. And then His Grace Vaisheshika Prabhu told me that just read, first time reading Prabhupada's books, just read for Prabhupada's association. You're just kind of trying to get used to that relationship. What is Srila Prabhupada trying to communicate to you? Mm-hmm. And that really helped me, so that I just go through chapter by chapter, reading every purport, and you start making associations. You start seeing moods that Srila Prabhupada is having. Like for example, the 2nd canto, you may not know that Srila Prabhupada, 1st canto he wrote in India. The 2nd canto he wrote completely in New York City. And I live in New York City, so I have some pride in that. but he wrote, and it's a good meditation also. And you can see, based on where he is, he's speaking to that time, place, and circumstance. So 2nd canto, he's in New York City in Dr. Mishra's ashram in Lower East Side. The whole 2nd canto he's composing, he's writing there. And then so on, 3rd canto, 4th canto, 7th canto. And you can see these associations as Prabhupada's transgressing through the 12 years he was with us, what his various moods are. So I think that was very amazing to see, even the migration of how Prabhupada is migrating in his thoughts, you know. So I thought that it was very fascinating, and yeah, reading Prabhupada's books has become an integral part of my life. Every day, just reading, whether it's 20 pages or I do 20 pages a day, which you might have heard. Vaisheshika Prabhu has an app called Be a Sage, page by page. So that's one way I do. I read 20 pages a day, and then in 2 years I'll finish the whole Bhagavatam. So that's very doable for me. Some people can do 10 pages, some people can do 40 pages, but 20 pages, 10 in the morning, 10 in the evening, that works for me.
Nice. Would you like to?
I love what you're saying, and I really like when you talked about structure.
Yeah.
So one thing I want to say, when I first became a devotee, well, I had a similar experience. I was in college. I was brought up Christian, and I was searching, and Christianity wasn't quite right for me. And I was actually intoxicated, and I was in my friend's room, and he showed me this book and opened it up, and I saw all these multiple heads and arms and legs, and this is so far out. And I just read a couple verses, and I'm going to put this mic on. I can put this mic on me. I said, "Where did you get this book?" And he said, "I got it from the bookstore." You know, and that weekend I got a ride and I bought 5 copies. It was Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita, as it is, and I gave it to all my family members for Christmas, but I hadn't even read it yet. But I knew just by reading and touching the book, this book is the answer to all my questions. It's really magical and mystical. Anyway, so it took me a while to get through that because I never met a devotee. I got that book in 71. I hadn't met a devotee, didn't meet a devotee till 1974. But I had carried that book with me. It was like my Bible, like this is it, even though I don't know what it is. So I had that experience. And then I came to New Vrindavan. And in New Vrindavan, there was a philosophy work, now samadhi later. So reading was considered sense gratification. You want to read? Oh, you just want to be a reader, huh? You just want to be a reader and just, just sit and relax. We have work to do. So it was actually kind of like Maya to read. But what I want to say about structure, which Maharaj said, when you have a structure, and you also said structure, the one thing I did learn when I came to New Vrindavan is you got to get up early and you got to get your rounds done before Mangalartik because there's no other time in the day. So that's one thing that we did. And what you develop, the habits you develop as a young person, the earlier you develop a habit and then you keep a habit, it stays with you because I can still get up early. I'm an early riser. I like it. And the older you get, then you have a lot of habits to unlearn, and then it's a little bit more of an endeavor to create a new habit. So whatever habits you create as a young person, you can get a structure in. Those habits can stay with you, throughout your life. So structure. So you make a structure, like they were saying, a structure that works for you, and the structure that you can do. 10 pages a day, 5 pages a day, touch the book. And I really also liked what you were saying about relationship. And this, I think, is primal, and I don't know if we talk about it so much, but having a relationship with the Holy Name, having a relationship with Guru in your heart. For me, that relationship developed organically because I was thrown out on parking lots, not distributing books, but collecting money for 6 hours a day, and you're by yourself, no cell phone, and if you get kicked off that lot, you have to figure out where you're going to go. So I would talk to Krishna a lot, like, okay, now what do I do? So it is about relationship, and however you develop that relationship is what carries you through. That's what gives you the faith, because Krishna is alive and he's real. And when you start to approach Krishna in a relationship, the holy name, the books, when you approach him, Krishna, help me, what am I supposed to do? Any way that you can approach him, he reciprocates, and then you're like, wow, how did you do that? And I've had that experience even just today, it's like, wow, how did I meet that person? That was like a miracle. How did that happen? So structure, what's doable for you, what works for you, and you got to understand your own mind. I have an ADHD mind, so I know that I really got to chant when it's dark. As soon as the light comes out, my mind is like 1,000 miles an hour, and I got to chant early, and I don't turn my phone on. As soon as I turn my phone on, forget it, I'm gone. So I don't turn my phone on. And I can't even go to the temple because then there's too many people there, and then where's Krishna? So you got to do what works for you, and you want to develop a relationship with Krishna. However you do it, talk to Krishna, write to Krishna. Something, Krishna he's in your heart, he's real, he's alive. So just start talking to him, write to him, and in the reading aspect, just get some structure, something. I want a relationship. I want a relationship with you, Krishna. That's the most important thing. That's all I have to say. But
thank you so much.
I really liked all those things you said.
Haribol, thank you.
And I'm not the best reader because I didn't learn to read in the early days, so I struggle with reading, but Krishna helps us.
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, so here we are. We're just kind of sharing with you a little bit of our own journeys, and perhaps you have some questions. Things you want to ask about reading, maybe some things you maybe want to ask about Srila Prabhupada's books, maybe some obstacles that may be there. maybe some doubts, experiences. We'll kind of hand it over to all of you. Anyone want to kick us off with anything on your minds about reading? Otherwise I'll have to read your mind. If you don't say, if you don't reveal your mind, we'll read. Yes! Thank you for breaking the ice. Oh, you won.
So whenever we hear lectures, it's really like, it usually starts off with a single verse, whether it's from Gita or Bhagavatam, but then over the course of an hour or 2 hours, there's references from so many other scriptures that kind of help create the point, right?
Yeah.
So when I listen to a lecture, I'm able to understand because the speaker is able to like synthesize all of these sources and all these perspectives to make the point clear. So then it feels like, well, I'm also really bad at reading and committing to reading. So then it's like, okay, so if I read the Gita, that doesn't mean I know everything or can contextualize everything. Or even if I do read the Bhagavatam, that doesn't mean I know like the context from like the Puranas and stuff like that. So it feels kind of futile in a sense, like I can barely even get started, but even if I do start and actually start being consistent, like will I ever know enough kind of to develop a proper relationship with the books and everything? So
Yeah.
yeah.
Good question. That's why Srila Prabhupada is so amazing. Because what Srila Prabhupada's done in his books is he's given all of that to you. He's given all of the essence. He's given you the context. He's giving you all the references for all the different places. He's basically bringing it all together. You see, the Vedas are millions and millions of verses. So the first problem is that we don't have access to the Vedas because we don't know Sanskrit. I don't know, maybe some of you know. Anyone here? No, we don't know. We don't know the language. So we don't have access to that literature. Problem number one. Problem number two is even if we did have access to it and we knew Sanskrit, we don't have the patience. We don't have the patience to read all those books. It's too much. Problem number three, even if you had access, you knew Sanskrit, and you had the patience to read everything, we still wouldn't have the intelligence to distill the essence of it, what's relevant for our life. This is why Srila Prabhupada is so amazing, because he's basically done all three things for you. He's made the inaccessible accessible. He's made a lifetime of study available in his purports. And what he's done, he's distilled the relevance. So if in those purports you read it, he's actually telling you, like Hadai Pram was saying, like he's bringing it to the context of the day. So what Prabhupada has basically done is incredible. He's basically shortcut everything. He's saved you all the time. He's basically, his purports encapsulate everything. And so it might feel like, how am I going to read all the Puranas and get all the... But Prabhupada gives all of that. And that's why it's almost like... I don't know if you have that in US, like a one-stop shop. Have you ever heard of that? Yeah, right. It's like it's in one place. You just get everything. Walmart or something like that. Right, so you get everything there. So Prabhupada's books are like that. It's a one-stop shop and you get everything. But when you were speaking, I thought you were going to ask another question. So I'll answer that question anyway. I thought you were going to say, when a speaker speaks, they bring in all the references and all of that, and they give the context. So why shouldn't we just listen to lectures and not read?
Yeah, that's a great follow-up question.
Yeah, so sometimes people also ask that, like, why don't you just listen to lectures? Like, these guys done all the hard work. Like, you just listen to lectures, they say a few nice things in between, and it's easier, and I have to read, like. So, it's like this, like, do you play harmonium?
Barely.
Okay. So, like, if someone plays harmonium, there's two ways you can learn it. You can, like, learn chords, like so you can play like Jaya Radha Madhav on like 2 chords. It's like the dummy's guide if you can't do it, right? So then you have to memorize, like I have to put my keys here and then I have to put my fingers here. Then I put my keys here and then I do that like Jai Radha Madhava. Better than that. But, so you can learn a tune on the harmonium like that by memorizing a chord. But if you take the time to learn the notes, and that takes time, right? Because you got to be like it's like, oh God, man, I can't be bothered. Like, but if you take the time to do that and you learn, then what happens is you can close your eyes and your hand will just move. And anytime you want to play any tune, it would just be like, then you can do anything. So in the beginning, it's slower, but in the long term, it opens up a whole nother world. So in the short term, if you listen to someone's lectures, it's good and you'll get knowledge. But in the long term, if you go to Srila Prabhupada's books and listen to lectures both side by side, then because you're going to the original source, then later on you'll be able to pull out anything from anywhere to answer any question in any situation to any person, because you know the whole thing now. Whereas if you only listen to people's lectures and memorize what they say and that, you may not get the full benefit. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And the other thing is that when you listen to someone's lectures, what you're listening to is their crystallized realizations over a lifetime or whatever, years of study. So that's good. But they're not your realizations. So it's nice to hear someone else's realizations, but it's not my realization. If you want to create your own realizations, then you have to go into the books yourself. Like there's a famous Sufi story where a student, he came to the teacher and he said, I heard that you gleaned many jewels from the scriptures. Can you give them to me? And the guru looked at the disciple and he said, if I gave it to you for free, you wouldn't appreciate it. And if I charged you for it, you wouldn't be able to afford it. He said, therefore you have to go and dive into the scriptures yourself and find your own jewels. And so yes, it's wonderful to hear devotees and their realizations, but what about if you went into the scriptures and you found your own realizations? That's more powerful. And that's why listening is good, we should also read ourselves. I don't know if you want to say anything on that? Yeah. So that's why, yeah, it's important to read yourself as well.
Can I say something?
Yeah, sure.
That's so powerful because, it's just like nobody can chant your rounds for you. Nobody can eat and digest your food for you. You want to develop your own relationship.
Yeah.
And you don't, if you're just watching somebody else's relationship and thinking, I can never have that, you're not developing your own relationship. This is beautiful, developing your own relationship.
Yeah, and we can be inspired by others. Like, wow, like I felt that there were people in my life who, when I was just around them, I was like, I need to read. Because the way they spoke about scripture, the realizations they had, you see, it's powerful to hear from others, because when you hear from others, you are hearing their words, you're hearing the information, but you're also picking up on their faith, their conviction, their enthusiasm, their taste. So you're absorbing all of that as well. So there were people who I was kind of around, who I was just like, wow, these people have so much taste, and that was great. But then I went to the books myself, So yeah, get inspired by others, but read for yourself. Yeah.
I don't know if this makes sense, but
Watch it.
how do you distinguish like interpretation versus realization?
How do you distinguish between interpretation and realization?
141 answers that.
141.
Remember that? There's that. Purple?
Yeah, come. Yeah. Sure.
I can pull it up if you want
He's
to
going
see.
to pull up a purport. Okay, so I'll just say a few things while you pull it up.
Yeah.
Okay. So, in one sense, we're always interpreting. Right? Like when I sit on the Vyasa-san and give a class, that's an interpretation. Because I'm taking knowledge and then I'm expressing it in my own words. So in one sense, everyone is interpreting. Otherwise, it would just be like no one would write any books, no one would give any lectures. We'd just keep, regurgitating the same thing. So in one sense, every time someone speaks, it is an interpretation. But there's good interpretation, bona fide, which leads to realization, and then there's a deviant type of interpretation. So when we look at the words of scripture and we express it in our own words, but with reference to Guru, Sadhu, and other shastras, we kind of work within that framework. Then we are interpreting, because we're always interpreting, but it doesn't become a bad type of interpretation. We're looking at what we read, we're referencing Guru, Sadhu, Shastra, we're drawing on our own experiences, and then through all of that we're expressing our realization. But when we just kind of read something and then we kind of bring out some random meaning according to our mind, then it starts becoming like interpretation. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that was beautiful. Thank you.
Here's a purple.
Yeah, I got the mic. There's a amazing purport in Canto 1, Chapter 4, Text 1, which is kind of like, if you ever want to share Krishna consciousness in like a speaking realm, this is like a one to like always have in mind. So I'll just read it to you guys. It's amazing. Sri Shonak Rishi had all these qualifications, and thus he stood up to congratulate Sri Suta Goswami when he expressed his desire to present Srimad Bhagavatam exactly as he heard it from Sukadev Goswami and also realized it personally. Personal realization does not mean that one should, out of vanity, attempt to show one's own learning by trying to surpass the previous Acharya. He must have full confidence in the previous Acharya, and at the same time, he must realize the subject matter so nicely that he can present the matter for the particular circumstances in a suitable manner. The original purpose of the text must be maintained. No obscure meaning should be screwed out of it, yet it should be presented in an interesting manner for the understanding of the audience. This is called realization. So, Srila Prabhupada answers that.
Sadhu, sadhu. Good reference. That's one point. Yeah.
I guess could you share a little bit more about the importance of, I guess, just academic education or reading in sort of, our path to bhakti is, I guess, some context.
When you mean academic, you mean like organized study?
The importance of reading, organized study, reading, because, just looking in the modern world, right, there are some students that will do science, tech, engineering, math, which have more of that reading concept, and some students where they're like, it's not for me, and they go more into creative arts. So a lot of times with Gaudiya Vaishnavas, it's like, we're one of the few sampradayas where the focus is just building a loving relationship with Krishna, relationships or emotions depth, which sometimes you may, analyze, and now it's kind of analogous to, building that loving relationship with Krishna. We have 9 types of bhakti, kirtana, archana, vandanam. So why is, shravanam, I guess, where is the importance of, I understand it is important, but if you can share a little bit more about
Reading specifically, yeah.
Because if there is it really like, if there is some devotee that's like, it's hard for me to read, or some devotee, let's say you said she hadn't learned to read for, until many years later. How come, can we still build that same level of depth with Krishna, or in our bhakti, let's say we just did kirtan and really focused on developing that mood, or cooking prasadam and or deity worship.
Yeah,
and
like what if you're just a
really
practical
learning
person?
all the rules. I was talking to another friend yesterday. He was mentioning how in Ramanujacharya Sampradaya, deity worship is very, very particular, very focused on. So like people who, will pick up in all the, if that's what they want to do in their bhakti, they'll pick up from that and apply it in their own Gaudiya Vaishnavism. Is that still a way to develop, utmost and topmost bhakti? Or where does that academic study really fit in? Is it just that's the prescribed way to get to know Krishna and Prabhupada through his books? Or is there other ways to get
thanks
that
for
knowledge?
raising this. Yeah, really good point. See, we're reading not to get through the books. We're reading so the book gets through to us. See, like the goal of study is not to know Krishna, because you're never going to know Krishna. The goal of study is to love Krishna. And so when we're reading Shastra, it's simply meant for the purpose of awakening our love for Krishna. It's not an academic thing. It's not about how many verses you know. It's not about how many references you can quote, how many stories you can tell. It's really about just getting more affinity for Krishna's name, fame, form, qualities, pastimes. This morning I was mentioning that if you do Hari Kirtan but you don't do Hari Katha, then it's like worshipping Krishna without Srimati Radharani. That's what Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said. And therefore, some of you need to go, is it, for service?
If you're in Ganga's Sangha group, then please head out for your cut-up service.
No reading, service. Thank you for coming. So just to clear that up first, that this is not an academic thing. This is really just like we're reading to get more attracted to Krishna's personality, like that. Now some of us are more academic than others. Many of you went to university, so like studying Prabhupada's books becomes more natural because that's what you are doing anyway. Maybe some never really were like big reading people or good at school, stuff like that. And for them reading is a bit more difficult. So what do? Just read the books and spend time with the books in whatever way is natural and comfortable for you. For some it will be like, let me do a Bhakti Shastri course, and that works for them. For others it will just be like, let me just hear, let me just read and make my own notes. And some will be like, I don't even make notes, I just read, and I just read until I find something that touches me. And then I get inspired, and then I move on. So everyone has their own way of reading. The goal is not to be a scholar. Even if you're a scholar, we're nothing compared to no one's going to be a scholar. We're not trying to become scholars. But what we're trying to do is actually soften our heart and become attracted to Krishna. Like I was saying, why do we read the Bhagavatam? Because the more we hear about the spiritual world, we start beginning to think that is the real world. This is not the real world. It's a temporal reality. And the more you interface with the Bhagavatam, you begin to realize that. So yeah, by all means, if the academic thing doesn't work for you, maybe Bhakti Shastri doesn't work for everyone. That's totally fine. I don't think they ask for a Bhakti Shastri certificate at the gates. Jai Vijay. But it's good. It's good if you can do it, because it gives you a discipline so that you will spend time. So that's why for most people it's good. So the ultimate thing is Eka Krishna Nama Kara Sarva Papa Kshoy. Chant one name of Krishna, job done, finished. One pure name of Krishna KOs everything. But what's it going to take to get to that one pure name of Krishna? Got to chant a load of names to get to that one name. And maybe you need a lot of wisdom on the way because the mind goes nuts. This world is a turbulent world. It's all coming. Sorry to be the bearer of bad news. People are going to leave your life. Your health's going to break down. The most unexpected things are going to occur, and sometimes overnight things can just change. It's all coming. Welcome to the material world. But we live in this kind of illusion that no, it's all okay, I'm all good, it's fine. And those who sweat in times of peace lose less blood in times of war. So if you study now and you become strong, rooted in the scripture, when life gets a little bit turbulent, you'll be alright because you're in the boat of knowledge. But if you don't have that realization, if you don't have that conviction, then when life starts throwing curveballs, to use a baseball analogy in the US, when life throws a curveball, are we going to be able to deal with it?
It's interesting you say that because I think for a lot of us who have arranged marriages, right, like you started with, with Krishna, we've sort of kind of grown up a lot with
the philosophy.
With the philosophy at the surface level,
Mm.
right? Whether we've read it or not. So personally speaking, at least from my side, I feel like growing up, I've been able to be a little bit more just naturally
Rooted.
detached because
Okay.
you're just constantly hearing Christians over it.
Yeah.
So it's, and I haven't done, like reading is something that I struggle with. I
Mm.
really want to do more of, but at least from that standpoint, like curveballs and reading, and just the goal is just to awaken love for Krishna. Like, if I'm with somebody, I don't know if you guys have this in London, but we had like spark notes and shmoop. These would condense books down to like a few paragraphs.
Oh,
that you're
okay.
supposed to
Like the
read in
Idiot's
school.
Guide stuff.
Yeah.
Oh.
Idiot's Guide.
So I used to do that all the time in school. So it's like if the goal is just to awaken love for Krishna, and reading is something that I struggle with to do that, like, is there another way that maybe I'll awaken love for Krishna and another path of bhakti, and then maybe come back to reading, or I don't know.
Yeah, and any of those. The verse we read this morning, it said, Sakala sadhana shreshta e pancha anga, Krishna prema janme er panchera alpa sanga. Even contact with one of these is enough.
Yeah.
One is enough. But remember, I made the point that each one feeds the other. And so, yeah, if you are naturally attracted towards one of the angas of bhakti, then definitely. But remember, by doing the others, you can deepen that anga even more. Because it gives you But yeah, totally, like, don't feel intimidated that you have to become some kind of scholar, or that's really not the purpose. The purpose is to just you increase your conviction, increase your attraction. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you for your time, energy, Maharaj. In our daily reading practice, there's days that it's really fun to read, like something really interesting, a chapter that's really interesting is there. There's days that are really boring to read, and maybe my mind isn't as interested or clued in. Kind of a two-part question. When we're reading in a consistent way, how do we read more from the heart in terms of applying our reading to our day-to-day experiences, our current positive and negative experiences? And then secondly, how do we get to a point where we can read more spontaneously and read things that are like spiritually interesting to us as opposed to just the structured approach to reading?
Okay. So the Vedic process of study is Shravanam, Mananam, Nididhyasanam, and Vandanam. So if you really want to study, you try to follow this process. Shravanam means you hear or you read in this context. And then Mananam, you have to begin to really think about it. Like, what does this mean for my life? Like sometimes we read stuff, but we're not really considering what does this mean for my life. Yeah? Samsara dava nalali daloka. This world is like a blazing forest fire. Right? It's like Sharirar bidja, like it's like but do we actually register like, okay, what does it mean? That the body is a network of ignorance and the senses are, what is it, pathways leading to death. So it's important to also think about it all. Like, what does it all mean? What does it all mean for me? Mananam. And then Nididhyasana means you try to take some actionable points away from what you're reading, that, you know, this is going to change what I do in my life, or like that. So it just may mean after doing an hour of reading, you write some notes, and you also write some maybe reflections, realizations, and you also go back to your notes and read them again. You know, otherwise over years we write so many notes, and then they're just like, okay, sitting there, and then what? So Nididhyasanam. And then Vandana means then you go to Krishna and you make a prayer that Krishna, now allow this knowledge to really go deeper in my heart. So eventually we need to try and do that. Shravanam, Mananam, Nididhyasanam, Vandanam. Otherwise it's just Shravanam, Kathanam, Pastanam. Heard it, tell it. Heard it, tell it. Cut and paste. But did it touch a deeper part of you? So that it's hard, no, to become a thoughtful person. Well, because we don't think nowadays, all of us. I mean, anyway, I can't say for anyone else, for myself. We don't think so much. It's brain dead. It's like one English writer, he says, some people think they think, some people, no, what did he say? Anyway, he says something like that. Some people don't know how to think, some people think they think, and most people would rather die than think. So imagine you just read something and just closed your eyes for some time and just think deeply about it. What does this mean? Then, what does Sutta say at the beginning of Bhagavatam? The Bhagavatam can be understood by expert and thoughtful persons. So to really become a thinker is what Prabhupada's books are meant for. And then when you become more accomplished in the philosophy, then you just a bookshelf is like, you go there, it's like a feast. Like, okay, what am I going to take, you know? It's like that. When we go into people's homes, the first place we go is the bookshelf. Like, okay, what books you got? Yeah, because it's like, wow, like, okay, oh wow, this. So much. I was just somewhere amazing. So many books I had not seen. It's nice, no? So eventually, then you can just go in, you can spend the whole day with the books. Read this, read that, read about this part. You know where everything is. Very beautiful.
Mark, just a follow-up question on that. So you were saying that some chapters and cantos are slightly harder to get through, like slightly more technical. And even though we know it's like a relationship, so sometimes you just have to to like turn off and kind of like read it, what's the best way of like not to kind of absent-mindedly go through it like a chore, and you know, like when we're trying to read, we're trying to apply it to our lives. So what's the best way to kind of navigate that?
Even the very technical parts of the Bhagavatam you can still get a lot from. Like when I was a kid, I always liked to go to the ocean, because I felt when I was in front of the ocean that the vastness of the ocean just put my life in perspective. I don't know how many of you feel like that, but when I go in front of the ocean, I'm just kind of like, okay, maybe it's not so bad. Maybe the problem is not so big. I mean, there's a whole ocean out here. It's a small person. So there was something about that oceanic volume of water in front of you that just kind of contextualized your own life. And sometimes I feel parts of the Bhagavatam are like that. We're hearing about the universe, about Mahavishnu, about all these cosmic timescales, and instead of thinking like, I don't understand the technicalities of this, like how does this all work, you begin to just realize, you know what? This universe is huge. And I'm small. And you know what? I don't need to know any more details than that. It's enough. And you're like, it was good the Bhagavatam reminded me, I'm small. It's okay. There's a bigger life than my own little problem. And in that way, you don't have to understand all the technicalities of the Bhagavatam to draw the essential lesson. Why does the Bhagavatam spend all that time talking about creation? In one sense, it makes no difference to us. Like, it doesn't help us. Right? But why is the Bhagavatam? Because it's helping to us to understand we are small. But it's a joyful insignificance. And so what I try to do is, even in technical parts of the Bhagavatam, I just ask myself, like, what's the bottom line? That's an English expression. Like, what's the bottom line? What does it all amount to at the end of the day? And if you draw that lesson, then even those parts of the Bhagavatam is like, yeah, it's quite therapeutic. What do you think?
Yeah. Yeah. I was just saying, like, I'm in the 6th canto now, and I just got through this section of all the 5th canto and like the movements of the sun, and I was so confused. And there was one purport Srila Prabhupada's giving, and then he's quoting Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, and then he's just like, for the English audience, this paragraph is too long to translate. I'm just going to put it here. And he just puts this whole paragraph of Sanskrit in there. I'm like, why are you doing that, Srila Prabhupada? But then one thing that's really helpful for me, many people say, you know, if it's difficult, skip it. But then one devotee told me that if it was important enough for Shukadeva Goswami to tell Parikshit Maharaj on his last 7 days on earth, then it's important enough for us to read. Also, another meditation is, someone told me that every part of the Bhagavatam you can get love of God from. Even one verse of Bhagavatam you can get love of God from. Because Bhagavatam is non-different from Krishna. So you can get love of Krishna from one verse. So in one way you see the connection between every... it's like Bhagavatam's kind of like Russian nesting dolls. Have you seen a Russian nesting doll? It's like a conversation inside a conversation inside a conversation. And then so the more conversations in you are, actually the more nectar you're tasting, because one devotee is like Shukadeva Goswami speaking to Parikshit, and then the sages of Naimsharani are hearing from Suta Goswami, then Maitreya Muni is hearing Vidura, and you're hearing more and more from more and more devotees. Actually, you're getting more and more mercy the more devotees are speaking. Like Radha Govinda Maharaj, he gives a good example. Like, if you're eating a mango, if a mother is eating a mango and she eats the mango herself, she'll be satisfied. But if she sees that her children have all taken bites of the mango and then she eats the mango, she'll even feel more ecstasy. So same way, like the same Bhagavatam, if it's touched by more devotees and touched by more like Maitreya Muni, Parikshit Maharaj, Sukadev Goswami, Nayan, you get actually more nectar. So I think that's those difficult parts of the Bhagavatam, that's how it helps me get through, is that these devotees are speaking about it. Let me just at least let me hear about it. Let me hear what they have to say.
Could you talk about supplementary books? Because I find that new books are coming out all the time around Krishna consciousness, and it's tempting to read other books. But I know we're focusing on Srila Prabhupada's books. But do you have any advice on that?
All these people that write books. Yeah, so many books, huh? Of course, now we have to be a bit defensive here. Prabhupada did want us to write books. I've got all the quotes. Yeah, one devotee, he said nicely, like, Prabhupada's books are the sabji rice dal. And then everything else is like, okay, the things around the side. Guacamole. Spicy. Yeah, so it's all around the side. Yeah, you can't survive on that. You have to survive on Prabhupada's books are a lifeline. And whatever anyone else is drawing, they're drawing from Prabhupada's books. Whatever they're writing is to take the attention back to Prabhupada's books. I mean, I don't think any of us are in any illusion that any of our books are, it's only if it bridges to Prabhupada's books, that's the great success, otherwise. So, yeah, we need to keep a focus on that. A good formula is always be reading Prabhupada's books, and any books can be like a side reading on top of that. But always stay connected with Prabhupada's books. Stay connected with Prabhupada's voice. It's powerful, no? Just like Prabhupada's voice, just hearing that. So yeah, we do live in an age where it's so easy to inadvertently neglect our time with Srila Prabhupada. And I think many devotees do it, they're not even aware. So you have to have a plan. Everyone in this room should have a plan. When am I going to read Prabhupada's books? He's given you the app. He sold it to you.
BSH
It's
page
free,
by
it's
page.
free, it's free.
Free on
It's
the App
free.
Store.
Free on the App Store, there you go. So you can make a plan. Really, without sounding, okay, now the heavy, I'm not going to sound like heavy, but it would be really amazing if everyone in this room had a plan, a 5-year plan, like within 5 years, I'm going to have finished all of these books once. And you can do that, right? Like you can say, I'm going to read this, the app will tell you this many months, and then I'm going to read this, the app will tell you this many months, and then you just, it's a good project to have, and then then you can read so many other things, on the side. Well, why not? Yeah, so it's Prabhupada's books have a certain transcendental content. It's different, isn't it? That's what I could say. You want to say anything?
I was just thinking that, I like that point you were saying that you have the rice dal sabji, but then you can't just fill up on chutney, because that's not good. Guacamole in your example. Sorry, South Indian. So you
Next
can't.
life.
Next life. So you have to get like the basic. There was a point, like me and my friends, we were just reading, and then they were just getting into Prabhu, I'm reading the Padma Purana, the Skanda Purana. I'm getting into the Puranas, And then one of our friends said, even in the Bhagavatam, Vyasadeva wasn't satisfied by reading the Bhagavatam. So even he wasn't satisfied. What to speak of us, the readers, you know? And you may have many people kind of like for example, in the ashram now, that you have many people like going into this commentary, acharyas, this and that. And then our ashram leader, Ramroy Prabhu, he brought up a nice letter, and he said, Prabhupada's saying this letter, you need 4 books to go back to Godhead. 4 books. He said, Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. He said these 4 are sufficient to go back to Godhead. Anything else is like guacamole.
Or chutney.
Chutney. Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita, and Nectar of Devotion, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu.
Yeah, I just want to say, you know, even for myself, any practice that I want to take on, so I know my mind, and my mind's going to tell me if it takes more than 15 minutes, I'm not going to do it every day. I know my mind. I know that, and I know that there's certain times, like if I don't do it by this time, my mind will surely convince me not to do it later on. So if you know that about your mind, I usually, if I'm going to start a new practice, I'll say, I'm going to do this for at least 10 minutes a day. And when you start doing something regulated every day, then it becomes a habit. So then you got that habit down. Then you can say, let me expand that, you know. And you can expand it because now your mind is already adjusted. Okay, this is what we do every day, and this is when we do it. You gotta work with this thing. I got an ADHD mind. You gotta work with the thing that you got, and you gotta, you know, bring it along. Okay, we're gonna do it this way. Let's just 10 minutes. We can do 10 minutes. All right, 10 minutes. All right, and you ease into it. But when you do something every day, even like exercise or taking vitamins, which now I have to do that I'm older, you know, if you just do it the same time every day, a little bit, you know, it's not painful. It becomes a habit, and then it becomes a habit, just like you said. It's overwhelming when you go to Mayapur. It's like so huge, it's overwhelming. Reading these books, when you think about it, it's overwhelming. But you just take a little piece. Okay, now I know how to get from this building to the temple. Okay, that's good. So let me do that, and then you expand it out. But you got to work with this thing, which is going to really try to knock you down. It's going to tell you, no, enough time, can't do that. Oh my gosh, it's too much, boring. Whatever it's going to say, you got to work with 10 minutes. We're doing this 10, and you take charge. You, the soul, you take charge. We're going to do this for 10 minutes. You can sit for 10 minutes. Okay, all right. And then as you develop it as a habit, then it becomes easier to do. I'm just saying because I have
definitely.
an ADHD mind, so just
10
little by
minutes.
little, and then you can expand it. That's the only way.
They also say time carries memory and location carries energy. So if you do something in the same location every day, there's a certain energy that comes. Like in the manna, I chant in the same place. And if anyone takes my place, tell them. And time carries energy. If you do it at the same time every day, time carries memory. So just remember that one. And I'll tell you another one as well. I think they call it tagging. Have you heard of this? If you want to start a new habit, then what you do is you tag it onto something that you're already doing every day that you're never going to miss. So if there's something in your day that's fixed, that you do like every single day, like shadow, or say like taking a shower, for example, then what you do is the new habit that you want to form, you tag it. So what you do is you do it straight before or straight after. And then what happens is, because you're going to do that thing every day anyway, it just becomes much more easier to then say, oh yeah, and then I do that.
Yeah.
So it doesn't become an isolated activity. As soon as you isolate it, then it gets consumed. So I think they call it tagging. It's something like that anyway. If it's not, then I made it. You can credit me for it.
TM.
Put it in a book.
Yeah.
Trademark.
Yeah. I don't know. Are we okay for time? Alright. What's the time?
12 o'clock.
12.
Oh, okay.
I had a quick question about, you stress this in the morning about how important it is to chant and Nam Seva. On that point, I have my daily practice, but sometimes I struggle with, it becomes a little monotonous. I have an ADHD mind as well. How can we best get the rasa out of chanting and build up our practices in sadhana?
The rasa out of chanting.
Rasa out of chanting. That's you now.
Try every now and again to do something out of the ordinary. So you have your daily sadhana, but try now and again to do something different. Like maybe one day in the month you can just go away to a park for half a day and just chant some extra rounds. And what happens is when you make special endeavors, go to the Dham, spend a couple of weeks and just say, I'm going to do something extra here. Then what happens is when you then come back to your daily activity, it looks different. This is why the great devotees, for example, even in our movement, many of them in Kartik, they'll just go away. Like Sachinanda Maharaj. He goes away in Kartik, nobody knows where he is. It's like top secret. And he says, I just chant. I just chant. And then what? And then I chant more. And then I chant. And it's incredible when he comes out after Kartik, he looks like this sage that's come out of years of austerity. He appears, and Indradimna Maharaj also used to go, maybe he still does, but he was telling once that he was in Vrindaban somewhere, I think it was at Surya Kund, so he heard that there was this Baba there who was chanting many rounds. So he decided to go and see him. So he went to see him, he came into his bhajan kutir, so this Babaji was there chanting. So then they started having a conversation, and then he said to the Babaji, he said, what do you do? He said, I sit here, I chant all day. So Indradimna Swami said, any problems? Do you get any problems? Like the mind or... And he said, no problems. He said, only one thing. Sarpa. Sarpa? He said, yeah, only sarpa, only problem. So, what do you mean? He said, sarpa, snake. He said, what do you mean? And then he explained that he just sits there and chants all day, but he says every single day a snake comes into the bhajan kutir. A long black python. And he said it comes every day while I'm chanting, and it comes up to me and it wraps itself around me. And he says, but I just keep on chanting. And he said that causes a slight disturbance, And he says, well, other than that, everything is good. So it's like, wow. Apparently there's a black snake up there. Is it? In old Vrindaban. That's what they told us. Right? That's what Jai Krishna told us.
There's many snakes in you.
Oh, sorry. Sorry if that was shocking for anyone. No, but it's not poisonous. But apparently it's a very special. Yeah, just in that house. Nowhere else. Everywhere else is fine. So what was I saying? Yeah, so some special time if you take. Like if you chant 64 rounds one day, the next day when you come back to chant 16 rounds, it's different. It's just different. The first time I chanted 64 rounds, it was like, you see, because like whenever we're chanting, we're like 13, 12, 11, 10, like 10, 9, 8. It's like that, no? So we're always counting down. So you're never actually in the present because you're just like, okay, 10, 9, 8, 7. But when you're chanting 64 rounds, it's like 42, 41, 40. Like, oh, forget this, man. This is like depressing, man. This is going to take so long. So you stop counting. And it's amazing. When you stop counting and you just listen, you just hear. Something amazing begins. You're like, wow, this is actually amazing. I'm just like, hear Krishna's name. So instead of hearing a countdown, you know? Hear Krishna's names. It's different. So yeah, try to mix it up, do different things. Try to read something before your japa. And read some of the songs of the Vaishnava Acharyas. Very powerful. You be in the mood of a beggar. And then you put your hand in your bead bag and you try to beg. Maybe Krishna will listen if we beg. So, yeah. You don't say anything more. Yeah. It's not cheap, no. It's like you have to try to put some real effort in. Like what Mother Malati said this morning, what you put in is what you get out. So like, yeah, Sachinanda Maharaj, he spent so many years, no? Like I'm just giving him as an example. So many devotees have done. But, so then when he sings Kirtan, it's different. Because it's someone who's done a lot of Nam Seva. I was once in Birmingham, you know Birmingham, UK? So they have a 24-hour Kirtan there. So once I was with Kadamba Maharaj, so we came into the Kirtan hall, and Sachinanda Maharaj was leading the Kirtan. So, you know, everyone, it was incredible atmosphere. He was chanting and everyone was like... And Kadamba Maharaj looked at me and he said, this Kirtan is the fruit of many, many years of Nam Bhajan. Like people, we may hear Indra Prabhu's Kirtan, but we may not also fully appreciate how much Nam Seva he was doing in the background. Like he used to have these signs on his door, right? Like, I ain't chanting my 16 round, like something, right?
Yeah.
Like, don't disturb me.
Don't disturb.
Like it was serious business. So, like that's the point I was trying to make this morning, that sadhana is so powerful. But we can't take it cheap. Like this is sadhana, it's like real wealth. But it means like you have to treasure those things and you have to really protect it. Like we can't just like do japa casually. Because if you get into also bad habits, it's like at a certain point I just said to myself, I'm not going to chant while driving. I just don't do that. And just overnight I stopped, and it was the best thing I did. You just make decisions like, I'm just not going to do this anymore because this is serious. And if you give it that serious time, when I was in 2002, I lived in Chowpatty for like 6 months. At that time, Radhanath Maharaj, he was more present, like very accessible. And the best thing about those 6 months was I just sat in front of Radhanath Maharaj every day, watching, like chanting with him. And for the first time in my life, in Chaupati, I realized, oh my God, this japa is serious. Like, you know, like casual thing. Like if you see the way they chant, they're really like all in. And it was profound. You know, they just sit down. That's it. You're there for 1.5 hours. You don't move. And it's like we got to build that up. And I realized, my God, these guys take this serious. And then I realized this is serious. Because japa, shall I tell you why japa is so powerful? Because it's the closest thing to pure devotional service, even in the conditioned state. Because every other type of service you do, you get some side benefit. When you lead a good kirtan, we all know. When you give a good class or people appreciate it, we all know. When you cook a good feast, we get something. But when you chant, there ain't no side benefit. It's just you and the name. Or the name and you. And therefore, the time you spend on your beads, chanting, is you can make tons of advancement because it's the closest thing to pure devotional service in the conditioned stage. That's why I've never heard it, but everyone always says it, that Prabhupada said, you know, X amount, 19% or 99% is in japa. Is there actually, have you ever read that?
I haven't read it.
Anyway. But, so anyway, these some thoughts.